Come forward, Dave. um, Dave is just a delightful man, and he moved here and became a member about 7 years ago. And he has spent his life as a computer programmer. But when asked what he was most proud of, Dave very characteristically said his eclecticism. So, Dave, the microphone is right there, and would you share our chalice lighting with us?
We light this chalice today in honor of the Unitarian Universalist first principle to affirm and promote the inherent worth of dignity of every person. We recognize that these are not just words to be spoken. Instead, they call us out of our comfort into the ever-deepening commitment, a commitment we make to the rights of all whose inherent worth and dignity are denied, diminished, or destroyed by systems of oppression. And they call us into the practice of looking into our own hearts with courage and honesty.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Crushed it. Now, if you would please look into your order of service, there are the words of the affirmation of covenant, and we can speak those together. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other. So the topic today that I'm speaking on is learning as we grow, a call to a more embodied faith. Those are big words, big thoughts, but it's really a very simple thing. So I've been doing some reading about the Unitarian Universalist Article 2 Study Commission that Reverend Sam Title from the Memphis Church is going to come speak to us about. Is that next week he's coming? No. Oh, it's March. It's in March. Right. Okay. So if you don't know Reverend Title, he is one of my favorite Unitarian ministers. When Maddie, my eldest, was in school in Memphis, we went there several times, and he's one of the best speakers I've ever heard, and so he will do a fantastic job for us, I'm sure. So he will come to talk to us about the Article 2 Study Commission. But I've been thinking about it. As we collectively reassess our principles to determine if they are still in line with how we want to move through the world, right? That's what we're doing. We're just checking in, reassessing. We're wondering, right? We are determining if they are still enough, if they still fit. We are a faith that places spiritual growth over tradition and stagnancy. So this assessment is a natural part of that faith. It's who we are. And it's gotten me to thinking about our principles. So I saw an essay written by one Unitarian minister where she noted that the one thing that our principles is really lacking is strong verbs of action. Now, I'm a writer, right? So in writing revision, we talk a lot about using strong verbs. Usually, if your passage is kind of, it's because your verbs are weak, or they're not even really there, right? Strong verbs of action. And the minister was right? The principles are written now are mostly ideals and general beliefs, which there's nothing wrong with. And I'm fairly certain that they were written with the strong verbs generally implied. We mostly understand that our principles are also calls to action. But I think it's important to continue and look within ourselves, not just as you-yous, but as people. That's the only way we get better, right? Is to stop and reassess and think. So at the beginning of our principles, we say that these are the things that we affirm and promote. Now it's that last word, that promote. That's where I think we are called ourselves to become strong verbs. We are the strong verbs. How do we promote our principles? Another way of looking at this is one of the phrases that we collectively embrace and that I personally really resonate with when we say that we are standing on the side of love, right? We are standing on the side of love, right? We all love that. If love is our choice, and make no mistake, it is a radical one, right? It's what got Jesus in trouble, okay? Love is a radical choice. In fact, it's what got most faith leaders in trouble. Dr. King, radical love, right? All of us are being called to love radically. So if that's our choice, then we must ask ourselves where that choice leads us and what it asks of us, how it asks us to act in the world. If it is for any of us, then it has to be for all of us. For the voiceless, for those with and without power, for those who are marginalized, for those who annoy us, for those who fill us with rage. I won't mention anyone. Some are recently in power in this state. So the action comes after we answer. Who needs us to side with them in love? Now, I don't ask these questions in order to shame myself or others, but to continue that work of the free and responsible search for truth and meaning that we value. We say that. We value that. This commitment is why I was drawn to this faith. We believe in reason and science and equity and compassion and the continuous assessment of it, right? We are living in line with those things. We are asking ourselves to live in line with those things. It's about our spiritual integrity, our actions in line with our words, right? So in his 2015 Where lecture at the UUA's General Convention, Dr. Cornel West said that, quote, integrity has to do with what is the quality of your courage and your willingness to bear witness radically against the grain, even if you have to sacrifice something precious, including your popularity. That's Dr. Cornel West. Now, I would add to that, even if we have to sacrifice our comfort, our ease, our complacency. Living an embodied faith is harder than living a comfortable faith, right? It requires time and commitment and deep listening and stuff like that. But that's what being a Unitarian Universalist requires. That's what it asks of us. This is what we signed up for. And this is where we shine. In fact, this is not just what Unitarians sign up for. This is what all people who choose to put more good than harm into the world, this is what we are signing up for. To me, this is pretty serious. The call of our faith is critical right now. In our state and around the country, people are being targeted. There are bills in this legislature that are, sorry, I can't talk about it too much. There are books by LGBTQ authors and authors of color that are being banned. The basic humanity of some populations is being threatened. If we want to live a more embodied faith, if we want to love radically, we are called to not just care, but act. Now, there are many ways we can all individually act. I don't like marching in protests. It's cold, it doesn't feel effectual to me, it's not my jam, right? That's not how I show love. We don't have to do all the things, but we can each use the time, resources, gifts, and spoons we have. I don't like to march, you march. You don't like to do what I like to do, I'll do it, right? It's all about choosing to use what we have to make a difference in the world. Now, we can't overwhelm ourselves with trying to do everything. We can't care about everything. That's impossible, and that's a recipe for mental stress. But we are each called to do something. Now, one way that I choose to act and to change the world is through writing books, children's books specifically. An example of when I did live my faith is back in 2011, I was at this church in the congregation, and I heard a story that was shared on a Martin Luther King Day service for the time altogether. And this story told about the Children's March of Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, when the children and teenagers marched in protest because the adults weren't allowed to. The black adults in Birmingham weren't allowed to because they would lose their jobs, right? And so the children and teens marched instead. At that time, this story was a part of our nationwide, well, worldwide, Tapestry of Faith curriculum in the religious education program. However, the story as written in the Tapestry of Faith went on to say that the white cops, when they saw the children and the teens marching, the white cops, and it literally says, parted the seas like Moses, stepped aside, knelt, and let the children, the black children, march through. False. 100% freaking false. I have interviewed and spoken with the children and the teenagers who marched. I studied it greatly and I researched it. So it was false. It was a white savior narrative, and it was being used in our country around the world, right? So for me, living my faith was not only writing a book about it, but also working, that is no longer a part of the Tapestry of Faith curriculum because of me, essentially, right? So I'm not wanting to go, ooh, look at me, look at me. What I'm wanting to say is, look at how specific that example of me making a difference was, right? That's what we need to look for, is the specificity of using ourselves, what we have, who we are, what we care about, right? Now, part of that for me is also me realizing and growing so that now, 2023, Monica, I wouldn't write that book by myself because it's not my story to tell by myself. I would write that co-authored with a black author, or I would talk to a friend in the black community and say, this is an idea. What do you think? Do you think you would want to take this idea and run with it, right? We're always changing, assessing, relearning. So the truth is, ours is not a faith of anything goes, like some outsiders would suggest. I don't know about you, that's what my dad says. My dad is always like, you guys can just believe whatever you want to believe. Anything goes with you guys, right? No, it's the opposite of the truth. We may not have a set of dogmatic beliefs, but it is the furthest thing from the truth that anything goes. Instead, we have a responsibility, a personal one, to assess, to question, to wonder, and to be critical about how we move through the world. When we look at our principles, we have to ask ourselves whether or not we really believe it. Do we really believe in the principles of our faith enough to enact them in the larger world in a way that is bold and clear and radical? If we're going to say that we are a faith that is committed to justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, we have to actually do that. It's not just about saying the thing, we have to do the thing, we have to be the thing. So I'd like to share a poem that speaks to my wish for living a more embodied, active faith. It's by Jane Hirschfeld. It's called Let Them Not Say. And the context to think of this poem is that we're imagining what we don't want our future generations to say about us, okay? This is the poem. Let them not say, we did not see it. We saw. Let them not say, we did not hear it. We heard. Let them not say, they did not taste it. we ate, we trembled. Let them not say, it was not spoken, not written. We spoke, we witnessed with voices and hands. Let them not say, they did nothing. We did not enough. Let them say, as they must say something, a kerosene beauty. It burned. Let them say we warmed ourselves by it, read by its light, praised, and it burned. So now this poem is without question a little dark, all right? It does imagine the judgment of us, of this time that would come from those in a future made by our failures. But it's also a poem that's trying to undo its own need to exist. Okay? The repetition over and over of let them not say, the poem's hope lives in that phrase, midway, as it is between like a prayer and a command. Please let them not say. Also, for us, let them not say. If we can still say, let them not say, then the future is still malleable. There is still time for us to become the strong action verbs that we aspire to be. When Jane Hirschfeld was asked about this poem, here's what she said. Quote, I don't want this poem or this book to cast its readers into despair. Despair is a prescription for inaction. I want this poem and book to be the bell that summons the fire truck to the fire. Right? One of my most treasured spiritual teachings is the Four Agreements book, written by Don Miguel Ruiz. I'm sure many of you feel the same way about it. Two of the four agreements really resonate with me for what we're talking about today. First, to always do your best. And then second, to be impeccable with your word. It seems to me that if we are impeccable with our word, as you use, if there is anything that is our word, it is our principles. Then our actions must reflect those principles. That is being impeccable with our word. If we are doing our best, then we are each doing what we can with what we have to make the world a more just and equitable place, to care about what calls us to care for it, to make the world a more compassionate place. So, I would like now, this is something we don't do often in this church, but I love it when we do get a chance to do it. I would like to have a little bit of community dialogue. So if we are indeed wanting to move from a faith of these principles being ideals and putting them into action, I would love for anyone who wants to, and I'll bring you the microphone, to share either how you are putting your principles into action in your life, or even better, because this doesn't need to be too self-congratulatory, how you can in the future, what you individually feel called to do. And I ask this not just to know what you're thinking, but to share resources, right? Together we are all smarter than any one of us is alone. So, is there anyone now who would like to share how you can put your faith and your principles into action? And you, Deanne, stood, but you do not. You can just raise your hand or stand up and I'll come to you.
I'm Deanne Shields Marley, and I am taking the White Fragility class. I took the first one that Reverend Jan, White Supremacy. And we all think that we're not racist, but what we think is racist is blatant, that's not where this comes from. There's no way to know it until you dig deep in it, like this woman that's written this book. And it's to discuss it is really good. So if you can join one of those classes, it's always something I've wanted to do something about, but I don't know how. How do we change what the world is with race, or what we call race? The word white wasn't even a word that was used for us until slavery, so we could separate ourselves from us, make it us and them. And so that's my endeavor right now, and I encourage everyone to read the book, to sign up for one of the classes. It's very eye-opening, and it's supposed to make us uncomfortable. I can't say, well, we do make it a closed group once it starts, because we do admit things, and that's the whole thing. We have to admit things that we don't even know about ourselves, but we will learn. So,
Thank you.
I came to church this morning wanting to just speak to my friend Jan Bowen, because she did something the other day that, in my experience, is totally unheard of. And I just wanted to thank her, because she came to me and she acknowledged a misstep, maybe. And I wanted to tell her how much that meant to me. That had never in my history happened before, and I appreciate you.
That's so important, isn't it? Because any group that you are in that has historically been a privileged group, it's so important to stop, to acknowledge, to reassess, to admit, to affirm, right? When we are wrong, because we often are.
I'd like to go along with that eighth principle in the White Fragility course book. It is an eye-opener. If you are white, you are a racist. There's no doubt about it. The way we're raised in this country, our backgrounds, you cannot avoid being a racist. Now, we have different definitions of it, but you are a racist. And one of the things that we did was, during Black History Month, we were asked to go out and make contact with a community that you had never made contact with. So we went out to Pankey. They were having an open house in Pankey. I think most people are familiar with Pankey. For years and years, we drove through that place and never even stopped, never slowed down, never looked, didn't know anybody there. And I said, that's nuts. So when we had an opportunity, we went to their community center and mixed with the people from Pankey and got to know them. What an eye-opener. What an eye-opener. There's a vibrant, wonderful community there that we know nothing about. And on top of that, we were going out to the white privilege, going out to our sailing club, going through there every week, going through there and do our white privileged opportunity to go through that community. What an eye-opener that was, and how much it made me grow, how much I enjoyed being there, and I'm glad I went to see that.
Nell, did I see your hand raised?
So they say that if you want to know what people care about, look and see where they spend their money. And I'm the finance officer, and we are going to be starting a pledge campaign soon. And I want to encourage people to give, of course, because you're going to be supporting the building, you're going to be paying for insurance, you're going to be paying for the lights, you're going to be paying the salaries of the staff. But I looked at the way we spend our money, and I found that we give 7% of everything that we get. We turn around and give that out to the community in some form of outreach. I would love to see us have such a successful campaign, and it's going to be tough because we're going to be raising money for a minister, and we're going to have to pay a lot to get the minister of the quality that we want. But I would love to see that 7% go up to 10%, and that just be the beginning, that we see that every year that we have enough money to do everything that we need to do and pay everyone we need to pay, and have sufficient money left over that we can see that 7% go up year after year.
Thank you. Did you?
I'll be quick. So I grew up a camp kid. Church camp saved my life, changed me, healed me. So I'm a big believer in church camp, but as I've become an adult, I just realized there's a really big need for the safe spaces for people to be at a camp, for queer people, for people with religious trauma, and for kids who can't afford camp. So in my life. Right now, I'm really excited to be the director of a camp that is rebooting in a way, not just because of COVID reboot, but rebooting, and we are focusing so much energy on creating those safe spaces, and not just for kids, people who have aged out of camp, to create that camp-like transformational experience for all the people who need camp. So it's been educational for me as I go on this journey, and it feels like such a way that I can intentionally, very specifically give back to populations who deserve that, just the way I received it.
Awesome. Yeah. Power walk, power walk, power walk.
Thank you very much. It is good to see the young adults here today. I think we owe them a wonderful round of applause for showing up here. We appreciate it. The reason I say that is simply because the more young adults we have, the more future we have. They give the church the vitality it needs in the days ahead and in the fights ahead that we have. So I welcome you, and I welcome you back next time.
So one thing that I get to do is, in this vein, is that I get to run the only, unfortunately, the only communication services for transgender, non-binary people to achieve the voice that best expresses who they are. And I can't remember the quote, so you're going to have to help me, but the quote that is on the Pyramid bookstore, a wall that says something like, you remember it? It's don't help me because you want to help me or because you pity me, but help me because your liberation is bound up with mine. And I just want to encourage you that when you do this work, be open to the fact that it will change you and help you explore and discover new things about yourself that you may never have really discovered before. So that's just a beauty there.
Thanks for that, Greg. It really made me think about wanting to be of service, which is something I'm really passionate about, but getting that how I am of service shouldn't be how I think somebody needs that service. It needs to be how somebody else views that service. So I need to meet them where they're at. I can't have opinions about who I serve. I have to serve them where they are, not where I am. So that's kind of what made me, thank you.
Gosh, that's important, isn't it? Pushing yourself aside and listening to the needs of what you're serving. Did I see your hand, Jan?
I want to follow up on what Ken said about going to Pankey. I didn't do that, but what I did do was go to a symposium in Hot Springs about the Elaine race massacre that happened in the early 20th century. If you don't know about it, just Google it. You'll get all the kinds of information. It was horrible. Over 100 black people were killed during this 2-day massacre, and it's worth knowing about. So thanks for letting me say that.
So the truth is, the Unitarian Universalist faith is one that historically has been full of strong action verbs, right? Our ministers were marching with Dr. King, right? We were one of the first faiths to openly affirm LGBTQ people, right? This is our history. And we individually can all be strong action verbs, taking our principles and putting them into action. So I would like for you, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with me. I loved that. Please join me in the closing words that are in our order of service. And Dave, you can go ahead and make your way to the front to extinguish the chalice. So our closing shared words. Go out into the world in peace, Have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all beings. Dave? We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls, to the world we live in, strong action verbs that we are, until we are together again. Amen, namaste, blessed be.